Good evening, everyone. It's a nice crowd this evening. Thank you all for coming. I'm calling the Champaign County Board to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Quisenberry? Here. Rosales? Schrader? Schwartz? Shore? Weibel? Alex? Anderson? Bergson? Carter? Cowart? Esri?
Here.
Harper? Harrison?
Here.
Hartkey? Here. Jay? Here. Maxwell? Here. McGuire? Here. Michaels? Here. Mitchell? Here. Petrie?
Present. Quorum is present. Mr. Rosales is attending a conference in Florida. We're moving to the induction of our new county board member. This is adoption of resolution number 9403, authorizing the appointment of John Rector as a county board member in District 5 to fill Jeff Kibler's unexpired term ending November 30th, 2016. So would Mr. Rector, I need a motion, sorry. Okay, it's a nice chorus over there. Mr. J as chair of the Republican caucus, a second from Mr. Oh, yes, Mr. Mitchell, that seems very appropriate. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of this appointment signify by saying aye. Those opposed? It's unanimous. Mr. Rector, come forward, please. Thank you very much.
I, John Rector, having been elected to the office of County Board Member for District 5 in the state of Illinois in the county of Champaign, aforesaid, do solemnly swear to or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of County Board Member for District 5 to the best of my ability. I will.
Congratulations. Come take your chair. Okay. Mr. Rector is making the grand entrance here.
Want us to all tell you our names?
Thank you.
All right, congratulations to you. This evening, Mr. Mitchell is doing the reading for the county board meeting.
This goes out to Stan. Almighty God, you are our creator and our sustainer. You are the light and our fortress. You are wisdom and our strength. We ask your guiding hand to lead us through this meeting this evening. May we approach our tasks with wisdom, and may we approach our members with respect. May we create an environment of cooperation and kindness. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work this day. May we ask these things in your powerful name. Amen. And we stand for pledge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. Would the clerk please read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on October 22nd, 2015, 6:30 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Thank you. A motion to approve the agenda and the addenda for this evening. Mr. Mitchell. Second, please, Mr. Esri. Any corrections or additions to tonight's agenda and addendum? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Unanimous approval. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the nomination and election of a vice chair. There will be no interruption with our meeting this evening. That will delay things, and you're interrupting the business of the county board. I will say it one more time. Contain yourselves. You have your signs. We see your signs, and we're doing business of the county this evening, and so we will proceed with no more interruptions. We're moving to the election of the vice chair of the county board, and so I'm opening the floor for nominations or for those who are putting themselves forward for a nomination for this position. Mr. Harkey.
Yes, as the Vice Chair of the Democratic Caucus, I would like to nominate our selection for our choice for Vice Chair, and that would be James Quisenberry.
Is there a second, please? Ms. Cowart. Any further nominations? Mr. Jay.
I would like to place in nomination Stan Harper.
Thank you, and thank you for the second, Mr. Mitchell. According to our county board rules, each of the nominees, I'm assuming there are no others, I didn't see any other hands, each of the nominees will have a short period of time to explain to the board why they are interested in this position. Mr. Quisenberry, would you please begin since you were nominated first?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. The role of the Vice Chair of the County Board is specified by statute and by our rules. It has only one function. Vice Chair is to conduct a meeting in the absence of the chair. There is no responsibility to do anything beyond that, signing documents, acting in other areas as the chair would, like appointments and such. And so I am offering myself as Vice Chair. I've served for the last 3 years of Chair of Policy. I know you're all familiar with my ability to conduct a meeting, the prime responsibility of the Vice Chair. I can assure you that I will be here, and I will be able to substitute for Patsy if she is not available to serve. I trust you know my way of doing things in that role, and that I can be an impartial manager of a meeting. I also offer that because I have chosen not to run for re-election, I don't have any ulterior motives or other things that I'm trying to accomplish by serving in this capacity, but I do think it is something I can do and do well for this board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quisenberry. Mr. Harper, please.
Very well spoken, James. I appreciate the nomination. I can't add more than I'd be glad to help serve for this county. I've always done a lot of public service. I think the board has run very smoothly in the 3 years I've been here with the a party chairmanship from each party. So again, just thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Now, according to our board rules, we will have a roll call vote, and whenever your name is called, you will state who you are voting for, either Mr. Quisenberry or Mr. Harper. So would the clerk please start calling the roll?
Quisenberry? Oh, I'm sorry.
Quisenberry.
Rector.
Harper.
Schrader? Harper. Schwartz?
Quisenberry.
Shore?
Quisenberry.
Alex?
Quisenberry.
Anderson? Bergson? Carter? Cowart? Esri?
Harper.
Harrison?
Quiz.
Hardkey?
Quisenberry.
Jay? Harper. Maxwell?
Harper.
McGuire? Harper. Michaels? Harper. Mitchell? Harper. Petrie.
Sorry, Quisenberry.
I didn't get to vote. Do I get to vote?
Mr. Esri?
Oh, Harper?
Harper.
And did Mr. Esri? You voted. We're double checking ourselves here. It is a tie at 10 to 10. Did I see your hand, Mr. Alex?
You did, Madam Chair. I would move to defer this action until the next month's county board meeting, in light of the fact that it would appear we are going to have a deadline tonight.
Second.
Microphone, Patsy.
Sorry. Moved by Mr. Alex and second by Mr. Harkey. There's no discussion on a deferment. So all those in,
Actually, there is, on a motion to defer, there is discussion.
is there? Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you for that correction. Yes, all right. It's open for discussion. It's been moved and seconded. Yes. Mr. Quisenberry.
Well, I intend to remain a candidate, and I do have the backing of the caucus, so I will vote for deferment unless Mr. Harper wants to withdraw his nomination. Otherwise, we'll have to defer.
All right. Are there any other comments or discussion? Mr. McGuire.
I'm really kind of sorry to see that we're splitting this situation where we have both parties represented, and that we're going down this trail to, now defer and start this back and forth.
Okay. Other comments? Second for roll call. Thank you, Mr. Esri. Mr. Mitchell moved roll call. Any other comments? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Quisenberry?
Yes.
Rector?
No.
Schrader? Schwartz? Shore? Alex?
Yes.
Anderson? No. Bergson? Carter? Cowart? Esri? No. Harper? No. Harrison?
Yes.
Hardkey?
Yes.
Jay? No. Maxwell?
No.
McGuire? No. Michaels?
No.
Mitchell? No. Petrie?
Yes, so it's 11 to 9, and this will be deferred until the November meeting. I do want to note that I already know several board members will not be here for the November meeting, so situation may be very similar in November. All right. Okay, moving forward, we can handle Roman numeral 8, and that's the appointment of John Rector to the County Facilities Committee. Would somebody please make a motion? Mr. Harper, second by Ms. Bergson. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, excellent. I'm going to read into the record our upcoming meetings. Our standing committees, starting with the facilities meeting, will be the 3rd of November in this room at 6:30 p.m. Environmental and Land Use will be meeting on the 5th of November, again in this room at 6:30, and Highway the next day, 6th of November, at 9 o'clock in the Highway building. The Committee of the Whole is scheduled for the 10th of November at 6:30, and County Board is going to be meeting at our regular meeting on the 19th of November at 6:30. Please note that next Tuesday, which is October 27th, and many of you in the room may be very interested in this particular study session, is going to be on the Champaign County Nursing Home. And note that that study session, as all our study sessions do, starts at 6 p.m. And you're all welcome to come at that time. We're moving to public participation for the evening. I do want to remind everybody of our rules for public participation, which is a total of 60 minutes, and each individual has 5 minutes. You see the countdown clock up on the screen. And I do want to note for everyone, I'd like to be sure that everybody who's turned in a slip has a chance to speak. We have 13 slips. That adds up to more than the usual 60 minutes. So containing clapping and talking out loud or cheering will help us move along from one person to the next person. And if some folks take up less than the 5 minutes, I think we'll get all 13 people have their chance to speak before the county board. So we're starting with Patsy Howell. Patsy, please step forward. I ask that there not be speaking. Would you be sure to turn on your microphone? Yes. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Patsy Howell. I live in Urbana, and I've been to you before with this particular issue, about 3 times before. It's been over 2 years that we've asked for this. I do have one really good piece of news. We're not here asking for reparations for the land that you stole from the indigenous people. So not yet. So you can take that off your mind. And let's move on to the bad news. And the bad news is that your constituency out here, you know, this isn't just hollering about, you know, Black lives and discrepancies. This is this is the people you represent. And those people have obvious problems. And it's documented, and it's been researched, and there's problems out here, and there's discrepancies out here. And so you have the responsibility to take care of that. I would like to see this vote. And in fact, I felt very good last week when people said that, you know, three people out of one group that we didn't think would vote for something like this. Y'all know who you are. And I thought that this was a wonderful thing. I thought it set a preference that you can't, what you do inside yourselves, like just happened with Democrat and Republican, hey, that's your business. But you cannot vote. This is not a Democrat or Republican vote. This is a humanitarian vote. This is the right thing to do. This is justice. And you'll be held accountable for this. You know, I'm going to say you're going to be held accountable in heaven. I'm going to say you're going to be held accountable now, okay? Tomorrow. And so I think that it's very, very important that you take this seriously. I know the first time I came and talked about it, there was a couple guys literally sitting over there laughing about this. I don't think y'all laughing anymore, okay? I don't think you're laughing anymore. So it's not a funny we're taking this very seriously. And as you can see, for 2 weeks we've packed this room. Okay, and I think some of us are ready to go to jail tonight, if that's what it takes. I am, if somebody get my oxygen from home. Anyway, I urge you to do the right thing on this. I urge you. And I also want to say one fast thing. I got 2 minutes. There was an article in the newspaper this week that was blatantly racist. I know that you're not accountable for that. I know that there's nothing you can do about that, but please don't be influenced by that. There was a dirty trick of mentioning a professor's name. I believe that it was, you know, hoping somebody would go and take their children out of her class and say, we don't want you to teach our children because you stand up for justice. So I just wanted to mention that because it was disgusting. And it set us back as a human race and it's this community way back. And especially when it has to do, and how it has to do with the board, is the money that's offered to make jails. That is one of the discrepancies. The biggest discrepancy with 70% of African Americans in jail. And it's not just because they commit all the crimes. And to say that is just outrageously racist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howell. We certainly don't want you to be in jail since you just got out of the hospital, so it's nice to see you here. All right, next is Gus Wood.
I'll be brief since I said my piece last week and at the rally earlier. This racial justice task force is not a solution to the problems of racism and injustice, but it is a progressive step towards that very solution. It can lead to the possibilities of redistributing resources and restructuring that alleviates the problems not only for us blacks, but also for all oppressed groups everywhere. We as the community and the campus together will remain in solidarity, will remain powerful, will be sustainable, and will be always all in to permanently damaging structural racial oppression in Champaign County, in the state of Illinois, and the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, liberation and human rights are at stake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Next is Erica Horton.
Good evening. My name is Erica Horton. I live in Champaign, and I'll be brief as well. As Gus said, this is not a solution, but this is a small first step. I think we're beyond arguing whether or not there is a problem. There is one. We know this. Some people choose not to see it. But the purpose of the Racial Justice Task Force is to examine this problem further and see what we can do about it. So those who are opposed to the Racial Justice Task Force, these are people that are not interested in change. They're not interested in improving our system and in making it more just. What I wanted to address was the proposal, or an idea for the proposal that wanted to be representative of different towns in the county. And as this map that's been passed around shows, I understand the idea of wanting to make sure the entire county is represented, but this is not a problem that affects the entire county. We're talking specifically about how Champaign County's Black population is affected. And that is a population that is concentrated. Most of the arrests, the addresses of people who have been arrested are primarily in Champaign, Urbana, and Rantoul. And by making sure that Mahomet and other locations like that, not to call out one specific, but that would be over-representing people who are not affected. There is a less than 1% Black population in Mahomet. So in order for a task force to be effective, it must represent the population that is affected by this problem. And so we urge you to take that in mind when you consider the specifics of this task force. I hope will be voted in.
Ms. Horton, thank you. Next is Dennis Kimi.
Good evening, everybody. I oppose the creation of a racial justice task force because I believe the premise behind it is seriously flawed and potentially harmful. The central premise used to justify the task force is this: since most of the jail population, but only 1/8 of the county population is black, there is a statistical disparity that in and of itself equals injustice to black inmates. To eliminate this alleged injustice, supporters insist that a new racial justice task force is needed to intervene between the community and the criminal justice system. However, if all it takes to prove the serious charge of systemic injustice is a statistical disparity in jail populations, then one could also conclude the following, though I do not, based on data from our 2014 Champaign County Jail Study. We need a gender justice task force because males are incarcerated at a per capita rate 8.9 times greater than females, a huge statistical disparity that would on its face prove a huge injustice. The system is extremely unjust to whites per the disparity equals injustice formula because, could I recover some time, please?
Please show respect for
Thank
each
you.
individual who comes forward
Thank you.
to speak. Thank you.
When there's racism blatantly being said.
Thank you. Appreciate that. May I continue?
Please, we need to respect everybody's viewpoint, whether you agree with it or not.
Respect our lives.
Not when you're a racist, you don't get respect.
The tyranny of reason.
Please continue.
The system is extremely unjust to whites because, per the disparity equals injustice formula, because whites are incarcerated at a per capita rate 8.4 times greater than Asian Americans. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Regarding the incarceration rate disparity between black criminal offenders and non-black criminal offenders, consider the following facts. Blacks have a per capita incarceration rate for Class X and first-degree felonies 24 times greater than non-blacks. These most serious of crimes carry a minimum prison sentence of 20 years. They earn county jail inmates a maximum security classification. Class X and first-degree felonies generate disparately longer jail stays than lesser crimes like theft or disorderly conduct. The fact of these much longer stays will alone significantly tip the average daily jail population towards a more disparately black population. If Champaign County only housed maximum custody classification offenders, the jail population would have been 78% black. To eliminate disparity for black inmates charged with Class X or first-degree felonies, we would have to release 96% of them from the jail today. While presumably just for them under the disparity equals injustice standard, it would be terribly unjust, not to mention dangerous, to the law-abiding citizens into whose community these serious felons would be released. Regularly following local news empirically confirms the above data by documenting that blacks are committing serious crimes far more frequently and thus disparately than non-blacks. So a disparity in jail population should surprise no one who pays attention, for example, to the heartbreaking gang and drug-related violence and the drive-by shootings actually happening locally among young black men. All of these factors challenge what I believe is a seriously flawed and harmful premise. Jail incarceration rate disparity for blacks in and of itself equals injustice. It is flawed because it flies in the face of actual patterns of criminal behavior, the core generator of jail population. It is a bad basis on which to launch and fund another new government entity. The disparity, equal, and justice premise is harmful because I fear that county board endorsement of a racial justice task force, as premised, says that the county board officially confirms the unsubstantiated dogma of task force advocates that we, in this county, are running a racially unjust system that unfairly jails blacks. However, this affirmation of systemic racism being sought harmfully and unfairly attacks the fine and professional people that operate our system. Judges DeFanis, Ladd, Clem, and their colleagues, State's Attorney Reitz, Public Defender Rosenbaum, Chief Cobb, Sheriff Walsh, and everyone else working in our local system. Worse, it does nothing to help victims in the black community where serious crime by blacks occurs at disparately high levels. This, to me, is the real problem needing increased intervention. It's the bitter reality from which a racial justice task force based upon an erroneous statistical premise diverts us. One last consideration for you. The racial justice task force issue may be misplaced at the county level because many of the complaints I've heard are really about municipal policing. First, it is municipal police that overwhelmingly do the arresting that results in black jail incarceration. The jail itself arrests no one. Second, issues of bogus traffic stops and street harassment are overwhelmingly city issues. These alleged incidents translate into virtually zero impact on the jail population, and thus your concern for the jail. I think these racial justice issues are probably more appropriately addressed by the cities. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak and propose an alternate view. Thank you.
All you're doing is taking time away from the rest of your compatriots who want to speak this evening by delaying me calling up the next person to speak. All right. Thank you, Mr. Keamy. Next is Christina Clark Kahn.
I wasn't planning on saying this first part, but just in case anyone behind me is unaware, the last man who came to speak here gains to make a whole lot of money by building more jail cells to put people of color and poor people in. So if somebody like that is opposed to racial justice, you know what's up. Here's why I'm...
Okay, that's enough.
Here's why I'm really here. Are you going to restart my time now?
Would you continue? Please
I'm ready when you are.
Please continue.
My name is Christina Clark Kahn. I am a mother of 3 young children. I volunteer in public schools here. I also work with Feeding Our Kids, which feeds, we've got more kids this year than we did last year. We've got several hundred children with no food that we sort for and send home over the weekends. And I'm also an IWW union member, Local 680. But I'm here representing Build Programs, Not Jails. And I'm here to present you with petitions. So on behalf of the organization Build Programs, Not Jails, I'm presenting you tonight with approximately 500 signatures, which are still rising. We did not close our online petition because we do not know what the vote will be tonight. Many of these names represent discussions that have taken place, time that was sacrificed, energy that was used, and stories that were shared among many different communities, churches, labor unions, organizations, and schools. While you see representatives from various organizations come to you in support of this racial justice task force, we want to stress to you that that is exactly what we are. We're representatives. We represent communities frustrated by racial injustice, and in the same vein, communities that are hopeful and ready for change. We are putting our faith in this process by coming here tonight to watch you vote on a simple first step in addressing a chronic illness in our country. Please don't let these hundreds of people down. We hope that you will be able to engage with your community more fully through this process and watch what could be, in the best of circumstances, a national example of addressing issues of racism, poverty, mental health, and mass incarceration. So I'm grateful for those of you who are supporting this critical first step towards a more racially just community. And all the information on this petition is in this envelope. And can I bring it up to you, Patsy?
Please do. I appreciate that effort.
Thank you very much. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Ms. Clark Khan. Next is Evelyn Reynolds.
Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter, Champaign-Urbana chapter. Racism lives here. Injustice lives here. Today, you members of the county board have the opportunity to make history in this county. Today, you have the opportunity to acknowledge that racial issues exist in our community. Voting yes for a racial justice task force is the very least you could do to show that you care about your community and that you care about Black people. Contrary to the lies, misrepresentations, and stereotyping that has overflowed from our local newspaper and Mr. Kimmy who spoke, Black people are not overrepresented in the county jail because they commit more crime. They are over-incarcerated because they are racially profiled, surveyed, and targeted. The same attention is not given to white criminality in this community. For instance, how often do police patrol UIUC dormitories looking for drugs? If they staked out daily in campus dormitories, do you think they'd find illegal drugs? Do white students not jaywalk? Are crimes not committed on the UIUC campus? Law Street Media ranked UIUC 4 in the list of large Illinois schools with the highest crime rate. But those aren't the individuals that you see in the county jail. It is a falsity to believe that Black and white citizens are viewed and treated the same way by our local criminal justice system. They are not. There are racial biases, be it conscious or unconscious. We are asking that a racial justice task force explore the systemic causes that have led to racial disparities in our county. Already, attempts are being made to link shootings in Champaign, specifically North End Champaign, to the percentage of Black folks in the county jail as an attempt to justify why 71% of the county jail is Black. In itself, that is presumptuous, stereotypical, and racist in association. It's an extrapolation, and it's careless, lazy, and unscientific. Very surface-level research will reveal that most Black people in Champaign County Jail are there due to minor, nonviolent offenses. And as Dottie Vera-Wise has revealed through her research, most are there because they can't afford bail. These problems are structural, systemic. Not every police officer is racist, but the criminal justice system certainly appears to be. In the proposal developed by members of Build Programs, Not Jails, we ask that the Racial Justice Task Force examine policing procedures and policies, and ask that the task force investigates arrests, citations, and sentencings. These are systemic variables. Black Lives Matter Champaign-Urbana supports the amendments to the Racial Justice Task Force put forth by Build Programs, Not Jails. We ask that the task force consist of at least 50% Black people, have at least one Black appointing member, that the task force consist of at least one Black member who has direct experience in incarceration, and that the task force hold public hearings in the impacted communities, Black communities, of Urbana, Champaign, and Rantoul. In order to have an effective racial justice task force, the task force needs to have Black representation, to the tune of 50% Black representation, and it should seek feedback from impacted Black communities. Today, I hope that you will do the right thing and vote for justice. We are here in large numbers with numerous signs, wearing our emotions on our sleeves because we've been forced to do this. This is our reaction to injustice. Injustices that have been ignored for far too long. We will no longer be pushed aside and ignored. We will not stop until justice is served. Vote yes for the Racial Justice Task Force because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Next is Susan Davis.
Thank you. I'm assuming this is on.
It is.
Okay. So my name is Susan Davis, and thank you for being willing to take my comments this evening. I'm a professor, and I recently retired from the Department of Communication at the U of I. I've lived and worked in Urbana since 2001, and I've raised 2 children here through high school and on to college. I'd like to present a little bit different perspective from what we heard at last week's meeting and what we've heard tonight. And while I urge the board to establish a racial justice task force, I'd like to argue from the perspective of someone who works very closely or has worked very closely with undergraduate and graduate students, as well as with other faculty, including on committees about justice and racism on campus. First important thing to say is that the University of Illinois doesn't exist in a bubble in the middle of the county. The faculty, staff, students all live in Champaign County, and we use its services and its facilities. We pay taxes, we serve on juries, and we appear in the courts. I, for one, am a recidivist jaywalker, but I've never received a ticket ever. Okay. We are very affected by county policies, by law enforcement and criminal justice in practical and everyday ways. But we are also affected by a larger and more general climate. One of these issues that most concerns faculty at U of I is the recruitment of new students and new colleagues. We are painfully aware that UIUC has not been doing a good job of bringing and keeping Black, Latino, and American Indian students and professors to our campus, and that this makes us look bad nationally and internationally. Last year, the statistics were a disaster, the lowest number of new Black students enrolling in more than 30 years. The statistics for American Indians are worse, and for Latinos, they are also not good. We've been losing faculty from all 3 of these important categories at a very quick pace, and they are very, very hard and expensive to replace. We know we work on a campus that does not send a friendly message to Black students, faculty, and employees. But faculty and staff are also becoming aware that we live in a larger community that treats its citizens of color very differently from its white citizens, and that is inescapably a part of the campus problem. There are many reasons for the recruitment and retention problem, but it is hard not to think, after reading the statistics on racial disparity that were posted on the Smile Politely blog, and many faculty members read this blog, that a part of our difficulty is due to the justifiable perception on the part of parents, students, and potential faculty that Champaign-Urbana might be an unfriendly community, maybe a downright dangerous community for people to settle in. No one wants to move or send their child to a place where they may be treated unfairly. Starting college or starting a new job is hard enough without that. There is, on the other hand, tremendous interest at U of I in discussions on racial inequity in the criminal justice and social support systems. The question of inequity, especially in policing, jails, health, housing, schooling, and in the law, is at the very front of national consciousness right now. It is also at the very front of a lot of research in many fields, including my own, communication. So even though most of my colleagues are not here, they're at home grading papers tonight, they do watch what happens with very close attention. So just as important, what you decide and how you decide it is of great concern to us as it affects the future of the university. We want to live in a community and work in a community that takes a forward-looking approach to very serious national problems. We want to be able to see our home community as one that is trying to use its considerable skills to understand why we have such a high degree of racial disparity here and not just here, and how we can best activate a participatory and democratic solution to these problems. We want our children to see this modeled in their home neighborhoods. In fact, our kids are way ahead of us, and they often see what's going on much more clearly and quickly than their parents. So I'm urging you to empower the task force and get it to work quickly. There's an urgency about this. We need to act promptly. And I think it would be a real educational experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Next is Leanne Kelly.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Leanne Kelly, and I've lived in Champaign for 23 years and raised all my children, 3 children here. Events nationally and locally, I'm going to read this because otherwise I'd ramble through the 5 minutes. Nationally and locally in the last several years cry out for the formation of a racial justice task force. Yet I would be negligent if I did not express my concern as to the scope outlined in the long resolution. As critically as important it is to address the egregious racial disparities in our criminal justice system, I feel that if that is the sole scope of the task force as it's currently written, the county will be trying to cure symptoms without striking at the roots of the disease. I recognize any epidemic is difficult to eradicate. However, with your indulgence, I'd like to share some research. Close to 350 youth were homeless in Champaign County during the 2014-2015 school year. Experiences of homelessness as a youth and/or frequent mobility correlate with a higher risk of committing crime as one ages. Yet our county continues to struggle to provide enough affordable housing for low-income families, for which African Americans are disproportionately represented. Several research studies have shown that providing families the opportunity to move to lower poverty neighborhoods, so families of low income to be able to move to lower poverty neighbors, reduces violent criminal behavior by teens. Despite a disproportionate number of African Americans living in poverty in our county has not dedicated itself to increasing the number of mixed income neighborhoods. A corollary to that statistic shows that childhood exposure to neighborhood crime increases a child's chances of engaging in criminal behavior as they age. Again, our county's poverty-dense neighborhoods have experienced relatively little change or have experienced decline in the last decade, yet I don't know how the county board has worked to address that. In a 2014 Child Trends report, adverse child experiences, and in the lingo of social services, those are called ACE, they're defined as potentially traumatic events that can have lasting effects on behavior and health outcomes throughout adulthood, including a higher potential for committing a crime. The most ubiquitous childhood trauma nationally is economic hardship. The other top 7 types of childhood trauma include living with a parent who experiences divorce or separation, a parent who dies, a parent who has served time in jail or prison, living with anyone, because many homes have extended families, who struggles with mental illness, depression, or drug abuse, witnessing any adult violent behavior, or being a victim of violent behavior. I recognize that we have to address the racial disparities in the juvenile adult criminal justice system because basic human rights have been violated. Yet I found it curious when Mr. Kimmy was listing facts on criminal behavior because I think that speaks to scope. He was looking at a very narrow thing of the crimes and who commits the crimes. What he didn't look at was what were the conditions, what were the experiences, what are the antecedents that have promulgated, now I'm off script and I can't think of words, have brought us to this point that we have 70% of our inmates coming from the African American community. Gandhi, Churchill, and Martin Luther King are all on record as saying that the measurement of any society is how it treats the most vulnerable. I urge you to consider, as part of this resolution, and I don't know enough about it to know how you change wording, that we look at not only the things that are happening now, but why they are happening, the antecedents, the real roots of racism and what they are bringing to our community. And if you want any of those statistics, I'm happy to share them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Next is Elizabeth Simpson.
How y'all doing? Tough crowd? Yeah. My name is Elizabeth Simpson. I've lived in Urbana for about 14 years, and I worked in the public schools most of the time here. And I've seen so many good choices made by the county board, and I really appreciate the good work that you do when you do it. I'm speaking tonight because Black Lives Matter. I don't want a racial justice task force. I also didn't want to get a root canal recently, and I had a strong pain in my tooth, and I didn't want to go. I kind of knew, I knew there was a problem, but I didn't want to. I put off going to the dentist really to look into it for months, and even when I knew that it was a real problem and I probably would need a root canal, I put it off even longer. But ultimately, I didn't want to know the extent of the damage, right? And I just didn't like it. I didn't like that it was true, so I put it off. So what does this have to do with the fact that Black Lives Matter? Well, we know there's a problem, right? I know you are intelligent people who've been around for a while, and even if there was good reasons why there's disproportionate representation, whatever that might be, it's still a problem. We know there's a problem. I hope that's not why we're here. We know there's a problem because of implicit bias, right? Just study after study showing that people, because of our culture, have implicit racist biases that they're not doing on purpose but come up subconsciously, et cetera. We know there's a problem because I went to the Citizen Police Academy and was told how I could, if I wanted to, stop anyone that I felt I needed to stop, and was told how to do that. And so that idea of, well, I think that person needs to be stopped because of implicit bias, and then having the mechanism to do that and being told how to do that, that's a problem. So we know there's a problem. So finding out what's wrong and how to fix it, that's not the threat. The threat is pretending that maybe it's going to go away, pretending maybe it's going to get better, maybe it's not so bad, like these people are going to stop showing up. Probably not going to happen. Ain't going to happen. So what I want to offer is some good news. I ran the peer mediation program in Urbana Middle School for about 9 years. There's been consistent problems with disproportionate suspensions of African American students in the public schools in Urbana, probably Champaign, but I don't have the statistics. The good news is that, again, I can get you the statistics, research stuff, but there's been some recent studies. There was a school who, less bad than Urbana Public Schools, was suspending 65% of the students who were getting suspended were African American. They implemented restorative justice practices. The number of suspensions reduced by 2/3. The number of African American students was reduced, the proportion that was off was reduced by half. So there's plenty of mechanisms that can be gone forward when you do, as I know you will, implement the Racial Justice Task Force tonight. This is good news because Black Lives Matter. Urbana Middle School and High School have just started implementing some really deep restorative processes, and this is good news because Black Lives Matter. And so it's really good to take a cue from the school system and understand that the things that are wrong will not go away by pretending, as we know with, for example, a root canal. It's not going to go away by pretending that it maybe will get addressed a different way by someone else another time. The time is now. And so I want to encourage you to address the disease of racial injustice that has been happening in our town. Got distracted. It's like students are texting while I'm talking. And in the disproportionate incarceration of folks is just one system of racial injustice, but I know you can make the right choice tonight to have the Racial Justice Task Force and go at least one step towards that because Black Lives Matter. And again, as people mentioned, that task force does need to be populated by community people who are most closely connected with the problem at hand. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. It's good to know you had your root canal taken care of.
I feel great.
Nice to hear that. Next is Mark Enslin.
My name is Mark Enslin, and I've spoken to you before about this issue of the Racial Justice Task Force. I would like to say that I'm in favor of it, and if you think of this as a difficult decision in some way, embarrassing or perhaps even taking courage, which I think of as doing the needed thing in the face of fear, there's a lot of attention put on the fear, but I think the need is the part that needs the attention. And I've found that when I'm confronted with a difficult decision, it can be helpful if I think of a person that I would like to dedicate my action to. And I would like to offer to you a few people that you, if you feel this way, might dedicate your action tonight to in voting for a Racial Justice Task Force. The first one is Timothy Kendrick. He's a person who was charged with a drug crime in Champaign. He's from Texas. He was passing through, visiting friends, and he spent 2 years in our jail and was ultimately acquitted. But that 2 years was like a sentence. He had a young child in Texas that he was not able to spend time with. So I keep Timothy Kendricks in my mind. Another person is Brandon Ward. He was a person in Campustown who was jaywalking with many other jaywalkers. He was the one African American in a group of jaywalkers and was picked out. There is a video of his interaction that led to his being taken to the jail. I'm putting very mildly what happened to him. And these three people that I'm mentioning are people where what happened to them I think of as an instance of racial injustice. Among other things that happened to them, what was happening to them was a racial injustice. There are many other kinds of injustices, but that was the particular injustice happening to them. And the third, on Friday was the 6-year anniversary of the killing of Kewan Carrington. I happened to be out of town the day that happened and came back into town to be present at a press conference about this, in which he was killed by a gun, according to the newspaper, that was wielded by 2 Champaign police officers. And the thing that I want to point out about this is that at the press conference, there were several teenagers, African-American teenagers, and I remember what it was like to be a teenager. Speaking in public was sort of an intimidating thing, and these teenagers said in public at a press conference, "What happened to Kewan happens to me every day." And as a person who is trying to take to heart this phrase, Black Lives Matter, and to contemplate it daily, these memories and these people I keep in mind, and I offer them to you. Thanks. I hope you do the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. Enslin. Next is Marlon Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marlon Mitchell. I reside in District 6. I'm a native of Champaign. I'm also a University of Illinois student, and basically what I wanted to talk to you all on just a couple things. And this is my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter, and I thought I'd bring her in just to see how certain things, just to debate about certain things when people have differences. I want to congratulate Mr. Richter on his appointment. And since I'm from District 6, I'm going to address, or I'm going to project this to Patsy and Mr. Harkey. Basically, what I wanted to say is a couple things. I had some things written down, but since I've been sitting here and I've been listening to some of the things that's been spoken about, especially with Mr. Kimmy and some of his statistics and some of the quantitative measures that he's used, but I want to talk from personal experience, something that gets lost in the shuffle when you talk about Black Lives Matter. And I say that because just recently, about maybe 4 weeks ago. I was on a U of I campus. I'm a PhD student in my second year. There was a officer as I walked through the quad on the campus, the engineering quad to be exact. And as I walked on campus, and I was walking from a class, and I was approached by an officer. First, she walked past me, then 30 seconds later, she turned around and she tapped me on the shoulder and she asked me for identification. Now, if anybody knows anything about the engineering campus, there's not a lot of people that look like me. So my first question to her was, why you stopped me? She didn't answer. She just asked to see ID. So having all these experiences through life, I know to keep my ID on me. But it just comes to show how the profiling happens and how easily it is for somebody that looks like me to end up in the county jail. That's how easy it is. I didn't get any kind of explanation. I showed my ID and I was back on my way. And as I walked maybe a half a block further, I saw a young man, another black man on campus, pretty much panhandling. And immediately it just clicked. Do I look like him? Now I'm 6'3", 210 pounds. This guy was 5'8", maybe 190 pounds. Black Lives Matter, and I keep hearing that chant, But I've been through some things in my life where I've seen the county jail. I've been profiled in my neighborhood, the Garden Hills neighborhood. I've seen all of these things. And I've also, just yesterday, well, a couple days ago, right where I grew up, on the north end of Champaign, an 18-year-old boy was shot and killed. And those articles that we read in the newspaper, they're trying to make a link. They're trying to make a link that says that black lives don't matter, and actually they do. I grew up in that neighborhood. I still live in the Garden Hills neighborhood where there's a lot of crime, unfortunately. But we have to understand why is that so. And I think this Racial Justice Task Force is just a start, a progressive start to point at some of the things, some of the systemic issues that we experience. And not only that, I also encourage you all to vote for the Racial Justice Task Force. And not only vote and for the Racial Justice and Task Force, but also make sure that it's made up of a diverse group. Those individuals that really understand the struggles. Those individuals that bring a different perspective to the table. Those individuals that have a different conversation than what is typical. We want to be progressive. And this thing about the quantitative measures, about the statistics, is a reason for all of that, and we all know that. It's a social and it's a structural issue. But here in Champaign County, I've sat here 2.5 years ago with Mr. Kalman came and gave the report 2.5 years later. At that particular time, my daughter was 9, 10 years old. Where's the progress here? Are we going to sit on our hands another 2.5, 3 years and watch these systemic issues just roll out of control? Well, I'm just here to make a difference. If any way that I can, I'm here just to share my experiences and teach young persons like my daughter that there is a different way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. Next is Martell Miller.
Ooh, coming after all these people, and something just ringing in my mind when we did the Pledge of Allegiance. Liberty and justice for all. You had us all get up and say that. On a vote, yes, for a Racial Justice Task Force, that's liberty, justice for all. And I'm gonna say something. Mr. Kimmy, on his racial, for how he talked and what he talked about a jail, y'all better not ever hire him to build anything in Champaign, because I guarantee I'm going to help shut it down. And I mean that. And I done said enough.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next is Pat LaRoe. She isn't, she's sitting right there.
Mine's on a different subject. And the subject I have is anytime you have rental property, you should see that the people have garbage containers. This is ridiculous. When down the street from me, as you all know, it costs the county money to deal with this issue. Thousands of dollars. We don't have it to spend, neither do you all. And you should see that all the rental properties in the county have these situations, so the garbage isn't dumped in buildings, down the street, somebody else's property, and so forth, because it's ridiculous. And I want to thank you all for helping get the building down, the trash moved, but that's not, you got other issues in my neighborhood concerning those same problems. And I want to thank zoning also, but that's the comment I have tonight about the whole issue in the Carroll addition. You let rental property come in. You let people buy property. I don't care who buys it. I don't care who lives there. Have them put it up where they have to make garbage containers out there and make rules and regulations like you do me. I make rules with my kids, with me, and I think you should do the same for everybody else. I don't think there should be any perfect person, but just right down here on Dawson Drive, man dumped garbage. It was in the news last night. I seen it. There's an example. Somebody has to go in and pay to clean that up. The tax dollars then fall over to us if the taxes go up. It's ridiculous for you all to have to pay this kind of money out every time somebody comes to the board about trash or any other issue. County says they don't have the money for pole lights, but they got money for trash. And if it continues, you're going to get more of it if you don't follow some rules and regulations and make some. Because it's not coming out of our pockets, only coming out of yours too. And I think the county needs to wake up over these issues on account of this. So that's why I came to the board tonight, is over these issues. I appreciate whoever did it down the street from me, whoever got involved at the county board and zoning. But I also think you need to start making some rules and regulations. There's none. They say they don't have time for none. Who's getting paid the job, me or them? I shouldn't have to call county over any issue. Do I? Yes. Do I come before the board? Yes. Does my neighbors appreciate it? Yes. Do they want to come? No. They don't want to come, but it's okay if I come. Well, I'm too old. Well, guess what? I'm not 10. And you know, that's just the way I look at issues. And I'm not afraid to speak up to the county or anybody else. But I do think y'all need to start making some rules over these residents that buy property in the county, anywhere. It don't make any difference. It's my neighborhood, your neighborhood, whoever's neighborhood in the county. To deal with these kind of problems, because guess what? Who wants to look at it? Not me. Do I keep my place clean? Yes, I do. But I don't come in here and say, I want my garbage cleaned up. but you people need to start making rules in the county over this, since I have no neighbors to speak up for me. They say, well, you're doing a good job. Well, yeah, I guess so, because I'm the only one speaking up out of probably 100. So out of 100 neighbors, there's my incident with the county. So you all need to pick it up from there. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your help.
Thank you, Ms. LaRoe, and I will share your compliments with John Hall. Dante Lotz is next.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first of all thank you for your time and opportunity to speak. I was not planning on speaking, but I'm the one that can't sit back and just take things for what they are. This past Friday, I just received an award from the NAACP due to youth advancement in the community. While I'm sitting at the banquet, my phone is constantly buzzing because families are in need of help. They're looking for resources that are not there to help them deal with their kids, to help them deal with their personal situations, whether it be jobs, affordable housing, you name it, the issues are out there. I just left my son who won a football game, Twin City champs, but couldn't stick around to celebrate with him because I needed to be here to represent the greater community. There's a poem that was put up in Kraft Foods when they started going through changes, closing departments. That read, "Nothing is constant but change. Flow with it, accept it, and learn to welcome it." That resonated with me up until today, because we have individuals that are afraid of change because it's uncomfortable for them. It might put them in a different level as far as status, or they're just used to seeing things a certain way and are afraid. But we are in a justice or else situation. What is the what else? We need cultural competence at all times. You know, as our community constantly change, I mean, you can eliminate the North End and look at our University of Illinois. There's constant changing of students and representation happening there. When I work with families, we look at not the, you look at a tree, if that was to represent our family, and if it's a healthy tree, you will not see the fruits with bruises and worms. But if you do see that, which is our community, you can't go by what's on the surface. I've heard a couple of people talk about, let's get to the root of the issue. Champaign is in a stressful state because of the families that make up Champaign. We look at, is there a misuse of power happening? We look at, are there unhealed wounds? We look at, are there unmet primal and spiritual needs? And we also look at if there are any physical or mental illnesses happening, because it's going to affect how the family operate. Looking through my notes, we need jobs here. We need jobs created. I think it's sad that the University of Illinois is right across the university with a wealth of resources. It's a prestigious school, but yet once you cross university or beyond, we're struggling with resources. We have the governor doing what he's doing, okay? And this is already, you know, families are already dealing with issues as it is, and then you couple those variables on top of that. What can we do about it? I'm asking that you vote yes to this. And the reason is because, again, let's look at our youth. Let's think about them. I have kids as young as 7 years old. We're looking for mentoring programs, quality, not the traditional, I meet you once a week for lunch. They need more than that. Let me wrap this up. I got 40 seconds. My son asked me a question a couple of nights ago, and he simply said, Dad, what if there is not a God? And I said, you know what, son? What if there is not a God? Is that going to keep you from doing right? Or are you going to want to do what's wrong and the evilness? We all were born with both of those seeds in us, and it's a matter of which one do you want to tap in? And then will you be able to sleep after you make that decision? So please dig deep and vote yes on this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lotz. At this point in time, I need to consult with my fellow board members. We're at 60 minutes. We have 3 more people who have slips. I won't accept any more at this point. And so it is up to my fellow board members if somebody wants to move to suspend the rules. I will keep it. If that gets passed, I will keep everybody without any question at 5 minutes. We'll only add another 15 minutes to public participation this evening. Mr. Harkey, did I see your hand?
I would move that we suspend the rules to allow the remaining people on the list to have their say tonight.
Ms. Berkson, are you seconding? Yes, thank you very much. Is there any discussion to this? Not debatable. My counsel just told me. All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. All right. We will continue. And again, I admonish, I will keep everybody to their 5 minutes. Patricia Avery.
I'll keep it to my 5 minutes, Ms. Petrie.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you. And I'm sorry I wasn't here at your last meeting where you actually took a straw poll about what do you want to do about creating a racial justice task force in Champaign County. I was elated to hear that this board was actually moving in the direction of doing so. I was very pleased. I was very just honored because I sat on the side where you all sit. And for you all to have come to that conclusion, I hope whatever you've heard tonight does not alter that course, because I am here to support the Racial Justice Task Force. And I'm not here, and I don't think anybody is here, really, to be quite honest. Maybe a few, but not most of us, to call anyone a racist, not on this board. I've worked with many of you, all. And I know that you're all decent people, and we're not here to call you racist. And I've read articles in the paper where we've called you nothing less than that, or people who have come and spoke with you. But I'm here on their behalf. I don't think that they're calling you a racist, but let me just say that racism exists, and let's not be delusional to think that it does not. So I just want to say that I hope that you pass this resolution to form this Racial Justice Task Force. Mr. Kimmy, he brought up some interesting statistics. And I do think that he talked about there was 8.5% times more Asians than white folks. I mean, come on. We can make the numbers be whatever we want them to be. We can play around with the numbers all day long. But what we do know, And the numbers don't lie unless it comes down to trying to make the point that racial disparities exist, y'all, and we know it. The numbers bear it out. We know it. We don't have to go and dig up some magical numbers. We know that they exist. They simply do exist. And I have to say right now that you hear the young people. I'm so proud of these young people that have come before you to talk about Black Lives Matter. Because it's not a moment. It is a movement. And I know that they can be a little full of energy and maybe to some of y'all a little frightening, but the young people this is their time. They have a lot to say and they have a lot riding on this. We have seen racism and ugliness that we have not seen since the 60s, 50s, and 60s. And these young people are standing up for their rights. And actually, Martell took something that I was going to say. We stood up and pledged allegiance to the flag and liberty and justice for all. And that's what this is all about. This is about justice for all. And we know that you all don't have the solutions to everything. Why the county board? Why not the county board? Why not the county board? You have the criminal justice system that, you have control over their budgets. You have control over whether we build, we don't build. You may not be sending them over here to see Dan Walsh and locking them up. But you do have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility in terms of what is going on in our world right now. And to be brave enough to really talk about racial issues and to actually do something about it and to pass a racial task force, that would be so commendable of this board to do that. And so I really hope that you continue on in the same vein that you started with last week, because I know that you had enough courage and you had enough votes to do it. So I would really encourage you to continue in that vein and vote yes to pass this racial justice task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Avery. Next is Byron Clark.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Byron Clark. I'm speaking tonight as president of National Council of African American Men, Illinois chapter. I want to thank you for suspending your rules to allow me to speak tonight. One of the things that I was fortunate enough to do recently was to visit our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And during that trip, I got to see a lot of historical sites. And was happy to do so. But the thing that struck me most about visiting the Capitol is the racialized setting that it is. At the Capitol building, in a tour that we were able to take, we were in a building that was built by slaves. This building was built by forced labor. And I think that's significant because we are talking about the foundation of the country. Another place I got to visit was Frederick Douglass's home. For those of who you may know, he was a runaway slave. And in that home, and actually standing there in that home, I was struck and remembered one of his speeches. And basically what he said, when he was fond of saying in addressing audiences, he would say, "I stand before you, having stole these arms, these limbs, this body from my master." And you think about that. Think about that. He was a criminal because he sought his freedom, right? Because he stole his body from his master. The reason I'm bringing that up is because we like to think that our laws are these arbitrary, non-racial, non-political rules that we come up. But our history tells us otherwise. It tells us otherwise. We know that from that point through the fugitive slave laws, through vagrancy laws, through Jim Crow. All of these laws were racialized, and they were put in place to suppress African Americans and black people and to suppress the black body. So when you think about the current laws that we have, specifically the war on drugs, the drug laws, and you think about where they came from, especially coming out of the 60s and the 70s and into the 80s where they were sanctioned by both political parties, we know that the war on drugs essentially became a war on black people because we are the only ones who were held responsible for that. I'll let you in on a little inside joke in the African American community when we talk about legalizing or decriminalizing marijuana. What's funny to us is that it's essentially decriminalized already for the white community because they don't go to jail for smoking marijuana. So that is, and again, it's funny, but it also is very, very tragic. It's a joke that you basically laugh at to keep from crying because it is a sad statement about America. One thing I want you to know is that in our nation's history, no matter what the condition of the African American or black people have been, the majority of whites in our society has said that blacks are treated well. Even in chains, the majority of whites said blacks were treated well. After that, in Reconstruction period, again, despite these atrocities, the majority of whites said blacks were treated well. Throughout the 60s, when we were being terrorized and raided and everything, the majority of whites said that blacks were treated well. What's also true is that each subsequent generation of whites, when asked, and if I asked you all today, were blacks treated well during those periods, you would probably say, of course not. What's been hard is for whites to understand in the here and now, in the contemporary, and admit and own that blacks are treated differently than their white counterparts. You have an opportunity tonight to not be a part of that disconnect. You have an opportunity to say, even though I can't change the fact that we are a racialized society, I can do my part to stand against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. The caboose for our 75 minutes of citizen participation this evening is Susan Peretti.
Hi, my name is Susan Parenti. Is there any possibility I could stand with this mic? Or do I have to sit?
Sit.
I have to sit? Pick it up. Well, I feel this is a standing moment. A standing moment. I don't know how that signs go in the back. They say something like black money matters. How does it go? Black? Oh, it says white feelings matter. Is that what these signs say? What do they say? Black lives matter. Thank you. Thank you. I want to point out something. Keep standing, because this is a standing moment. Supposing you go home and your husband tells you, the basement has flooded. The basement has flooded. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to look through the yellow pages or click on the internet, and you're going to get somebody, lands or, plumbing and heating, to get over there. Oh, but it's Thursday night, maybe you'd have to wait till tomorrow morning. But you'd act on that really quickly because your wedding dress is floating there in the water. The books are floating there in the water. You're seeing things ruined and damaged. So you'd act on that really fast because it's in your interest to do that. Now, supposing your granddaughter calls you and said, Dad or Grandpa, can you come over right now? Because I need you to take care of my son. Now, would you wait a week or two or a month to come over? No, you'd be there in a flash, because as the woman said, we are decent people. And supposing tomorrow when you got to take your kids to school and you put that key, or you got a Prius and you do the weird thing, and it starts, but this time it doesn't start. Now, are you going to be waiting 12, 14, 16 months, 24, 30, 2.5 years to get your car fixed? No, it's in your interest to get your car fixed. 2.5 years. Okay, let's admit it. It's not been any of our interest to get this racial task force thing happening immediately. So that means to me simply, you're disqualified. That's it. And when people are disqualified, they realize there may be another group that is qualified. The task force will be qualified. You had your month. You had your 2 months, your 4 months, your 6 months. And a lot of us are worried you're going to start dithering around again, because that's the word dithering. So give it up. Pass the baton to people who care. You obviously don't care enough, or you care about other things. I don't think care is quantifiable. Either you care or you don't, and you haven't cared enough to get that plumber into your basement, to get over to your granddaughter's house, to get your car fixed. All these things, I know you would be right on there to make those things happen. But about this, you have not. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parenti. This is the end of public participation for this session of the County Board. We're moving on to a motion to approve the consent agenda, please. Thank you, Mr. Quisenberry. Mr. Esri has the second. Anybody want to pull any items from the consent agenda before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, roll call. I do it every time.
Quisenberry? Yes. Rector?
Yes.
Schrader? Yes. Schwartz? Yes. Shore? Yes. Alex? Yes. Anderson? Yes. Bergson? Yes. Carter? Yes. Court? Yes. Esri?
Yes.
Harper? Yes. Harrison? Yes. Hartke? Yes. Jay? Yes. Maxwell? Yes. McGuire? Yes. Michaels? Yes. Mitchell? Yes. Petrie?
Yes. Thank you very much. Are there any board communications this evening? Mr. Shore.
I am pleased to announce that I have graduated from the Leadership Academy, jointly offered by the United Counties Council of Illinois and the University of Illinois.
Any other communications? Well, I do have one. I wasn't going to do this, but we have such an outstanding group of citizens here this evening, is to let everybody know that Mr. Maxwell, Ms. Bergson, and I will be spending from 6 to midnight at the county jail on Friday and Saturday, so that we have the experience of learning more than we know presently about our county jail. Okay, with that, we've been in session now for 90 minutes. We'll have a 5-minute break, and then we'll be right back to work on the rest of our agenda. Okay, I'm calling the meeting back to order. My apologies that our break was longer than I had promised, but come on, folks. Do you want us to get to discussion of the resolution or not? We have to do our business here. The TV station cornered me over there, so I do apologize that the recess was longer than I had stated. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Quisenberry.
Where are my glasses?
Rector. Schrader. Schwartz. Shore. Alex. Anderson. Bergson. Carter. Cowart. Esri.
Here.
Harper. Harrison. Hartkey.
Here.
Jay. Maxwell.
Hartley.
I'm here.
Maxwell.
Here.
McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie.
Present. I will entertain an omnibus motion for approval of the minutes of August 20th, September 17, excuse me, September 17, 24, and 29. Mr. Mitchell, a second? Oh, Ms. Bergson, sorry, I didn't see you. Any corrections or adjustments to any of those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. All right, thank you very much. To our two gentlemen from the Veterans Assistance Commission, first of all, thank you so much for your patience. I know it's been a long evening for you, and please tell us about your successes in these past months.
Well, thank you. Most of you guys know me. I'm Brad Gould from the Veterans Assistance Commission, and this gentleman back here is John Maggio. He's the president of the Veterans Assistance Board. First off, I'd like to thank you for your backing and support. You caused me to have one of the better jobs in Champaign County because I help veterans on a daily basis, and without your support, we could could not do that. Mr. Alex, your committee, I'd like to thank you. I know it was just a drop in the bucket, but that's about 25 days. Next year, I will be able to continue to help veterans, and we all appreciate it. You guys should have a green sheet here. Sorry about it. I grew up as a son of a basketball coach, and I was in the military medical logistics for 22 years, so numbers and spreadsheets and stats, I guess, is part of my life. The key things to make it real easy is that we have spent 82% of our budget as of yesterday. The things that stand out the most is utilities is up about 17% requested utilities, and I would probably take an educated guess, and that was due to LIHEAP and that going down. And also mortgage request or assistance was up, and that I can tell you for a fact that had to do with the layoffs of some of the veterans that are at Lincoln's Challenge. Some of the things that changed on, looks like it's going to be the same, is you guys can see from 2415 to 2014 is the burial claims are down. I'd love to say that veterans weren't dying, but that's not true. The VA took over some of that process. If you're already in the VA system and they went ahead and filled out the paperwork instead of having the spouse come to someone like me. So that's a big help. The one thing is down, and we all should be proud of, is the denials. We made some changes at the beginning of last year to help spread the wealth, and the denials are down from 77 as of right now, and that's as of end of September, and I don't think we're going to reach a goal of 196 like we did have last year. So I would entertain any questions or anything to my madness on this spreadsheet. I'd be glad to answer.
Are there any questions or just praise? Oh, Mr. Quisenberry,
Yeah,
is that praise?
I was just going to thank you for your work.
No problem. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yep. Thanks for the work, and I think that the veterans are definitely a group that deserve as much assistance as possible. One of the things I might suggest is on your expense breakdown. We were talking about it up here, and you clarified it, but maybe all those line items, if you could just add assistance to the spreadsheet, and that way, when somebody picks it up and reads it later, that's probably clear to you on a working basis, but somebody that just picks it up to look at it for the first time.
I have no problem with that.
Okay, thanks.
Again, Mr.
Yeah,
Quisenberry.
I think I'm gonna clarify what Mr. Mitchell is saying. When you look at it, it looks like those are expenses for those items as opposed to this is stuff paid out for those items.
Oh, yeah,
And
that was just people that's coming into my office
We-
and what I broke it down into.
Yeah, we understand that, but it's not your expenses, it's their expenses.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. I can do that tomorrow morning.
Again, thank you for all the work that you have done, your patience this evening, and your report will be put on file.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Vice.
Okay, next we have Highway and Transportation Summary Report, and we will be putting that on file. Do you have anything to add to that, Ms. Cowart?
No, I don't. We have nothing for the board.
Okay, thank you. And we have, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Esri.
Well, going into Aries' responsibility, I was going to make the motion to suspend the rules so that we may act on and discuss business that has not become before a committee under environmental land use. This for specifically under environmental and land use, resolution 9410, finance, resolution number 9430, and listed under other business, resolution number 9431.
Thank you very much for taking care of that. Is there a second? Mr. Alex, is there any questions on suspending the rule to take care of the business that didn't go through committee? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. Let's proceed. Ms. Berkson, Justice and Social Service.
The Resolution 9405 establishing a racial justice task force.
And you are making a motion for that resolution. Thank you. Ms. Cowart seconds that. All right, now the floor is open for discussion and comment. Mr. Harkey.
Yeah, I am going to offer as an amendment that we change this task force to be the second longer version that was passed out at each one's table and was sent out via email. And I would ask to speak to that if it receives a second.
Thank you, Mr. Harkey. Is there a second? Ms. Cowart, there's a second. All right, we're open for discussion now. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Harkey, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, okay, so as to why we're proposing the slightly more detailed version, there's a couple of reasons. One, this original version doesn't mention how many members are on this board. It doesn't give any guidance on what kind of specialties they should have. It doesn't specify exactly how they're to be appointed other than the chair shall make the appointment. Also, this newer resolution has language in it to provide for the membership of members of the Urbana and Champaign City Council. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One, as people have stated, the Urbana and Champaign not only have the highest concentration of minority populations, but they are the enforcement and policing agencies that often bring folks to us to be charged. The fact that we requested that the Urbana City Council and the Champaign City Council choose their own members does not preclude the idea of the chair appointing someone from those councils should those councils choose not to choose someone. I've spoken to several city council members, many of whom are willing to serve. And then I would like to speak to the other thing that has been listed as a criticism of this, and that it's its lack of scope, and that it specifically targets mostly criminal justice and the things that we can do. There's several reasons for that. Number one being strictly, what can the county do? For example, if this racial justice task force comes back talking about poverty and lack of education and things like that, those are things that the county board really has no role in. The county does not have much in the way of an anti-poverty program, not to say that we shouldn't, but those are roles of the state. The county does not distribute education funding. Those are the roles of the city, of the school districts. Of course, there could be members of the school district on this board, But there's one other thing, and I think it's what people are hitting at here tonight. There are poor white folks in this county who are poorly educated as well, but they are not overly represented in the jail. This needs to look at the most virulent part of the problem of racism, and that is incarceration of folks wrongly by the state. Whether some consider it wrongly, whether consider it to be being overly aggressive in policing. You know, I hear comments about people talking about that one of the goals of this racial justice task force might be to let violent criminals out. I find that extraordinarily irresponsible and a bit of an insult not only to this board but to the activists here. They do not want violent murdering criminals loose in their communities, but they do want people who are pulled over for jaywalking to not get an automatic ticket to jail. They want folks that are in trouble at school to not get direct to school to prison pipeline. So that's the goal of this board. I am going to ask that the county board support the more detailed resolution. The only strikeout that we would make, mostly for clarity, and it was left in there as an accident from previous editions, is the final line of the third be it resolved that states, failure on the part of these entities to provide funding shall not prevent formation of this task. We removed all funding of this board at request of many, many members, so therefore that line is not pertain, and as a friendly amendment, I would ask that that line be stricken.
Just for clarification, so you are offering this document as an amendment, but within your amendment, you are making a friendly amendment to your own document to remove that.
Point of order, I think what Mr. Hartke is clarifying the text of the substitution that he's making by asking us to strike that failure on the part of these entities to provide funding line.
All right, is there?
I would accept that as clarification of the substitution
Okay.
he is proposing in the amendment.
Are the rest of you comfortable with that just being a clarification? All right, fine. It's still open for discussion. Mr. Alex.
I'll support the more lengthy version, but that being said, I think basically exactly the same thing will happen if we approve this as will happen if we approve the motion that was originally on the agenda. I think this clarifies a number of the issues. This gives a little more structure, how many members and so forth, but everything that's set forth in this amendment is also possible under the more general item that's before us. So I'll support this, but my big concern is the overall issue.
All right, Ms. Bergson.
I support the shorter version. Tonight we've had largely a bunch of white people of goodwill saying they want a racial justice task force. And the long version is more prescriptive as to who should be on it and what it should do. And we are not black. We cannot understand what it feels like to walk across campus and be asked for your ID. It doesn't happen. And so I think the short version leaves it open for the white community to start listening. Instead of making prescriptions about who should be on it and what it should do, I think the task force should go into the black communities and ask what it needs to do. And that's why I prefer the short form.
Thank you, Ms. Bergson. Are there, Mr. Anderson?
Thank you. You know, I've given this a lot of thought over the last week, and I've been trying to do some research, and you know, I draw upon my own life experiences, as we all do, and I try to look at it from the perspective of my constituents and for what's best for the county. Last week, I voiced that I was more inclined to support a coalition approach as opposed to the county board overseeing this or creating this task force, but some type of coalition being formed with all the municipalities involved, which would include the county. You know, this evening we received a document where people live in jails, and it tells me that most of the people in the jail are currently from the city of Champaign and Urbana, and the remaining majority or large number comes out of Rantoul. And I tend to favor this matter going towards the community coalition as opposed to creating or forming a task force. You know, this becomes an interesting issue, I think, to understand. I've heard for the last two meetings, people who are upset and outraged by the fact that there are 70% African Americans in the jail, and I understand that. I understand what happened in Ferguson. I read the report. We're not Ferguson, but I understand what happened there. And certainly a lot of injustice happened there. Inexcusable. And I know there are mechanisms, and this isn't the solution, but I know there are mechanisms to make complaints about the way you're treated by your local law enforcement. So while I was just doing some quick research online, I went to Urbana and Champaign's websites and their respective police departments. And what I found was Urbana has a civilian police review board, and they put out an annual report. The last one I could find was 2012, but that was fine. I thought that was representative. And they categorized things into 15 different complaint types. But two of them stood out to me because of what we're discussing this evening, and that was one complaint that somebody can make is racial profiling. And the other is discrimination. It doesn't have to be made at the time of arrest. It can be made any time afterwards. And they spell out what each of those categories mean. But looking at their statistics, between 2005 and 12, the Urbana Police Department received about 165,000 calls for service. So that's the police acting in some capacity, either they were called or initiated some type of activity. So that's an average of about 20,500 calls a year. Now, during that same 8-year period, 2005 to 12, the total number of racial profiling and discrimination complaints that the review board looked at was 3. 3 people made allegations that they were racially profiled or discriminated against. I just don't understand that. I hear the outrage, and I understand, and maybe people just aren't complaining.
That's right.
But I don't understand it. I mean, there are thousands of people going through that jail every year, whether they're just in and out for some reason or being sentenced to it or waiting to go to jail. There are a lot of people who go through or go to prison. There are a lot of people in our jail. City of Champaign was basically the same. They have the same category, discrimination, racial profiling, and they have almost 3 times the calls for service. And between 2010 and 14, which is a 5-year period, they had 7 complaints. So I don't quite get why people aren't using that mechanism, and that's an indicator of dissatisfaction in the community, but it's not being voiced. And I'm not saying this is the wherefore-all, I'm just saying I'm looking at it. I'm trying to, what is the problem? You know, this jaywalker percentage I hear of that being African-American, that needs to be studied. That just doesn't sound right to me. It doesn't sit well. I don't know why it is. But the way I look at this whole thing is the people who enter the criminal justice system end up in the jail or a prison and or in the probation realm. Those entities have no effect on what comes to them. It just simply arrives, it's prescribed on how much time they're to serve and or be on probation, and then they're done with it. As long as the people behave and do what's expected of them, they move on in their lives. The next step up is the judiciary, and those are the people who adjudicate these matters that are brought before them by the law enforcement arm of our community. And then there's law enforcement. Now, so I guess what I'm saying here is there a problem with the judiciary? I don't know. That maybe needs to be looked at to see if there's a bias within the judiciary. But then stepping up a rung higher would be law enforcement itself. And the vast majority, I suspect, is Champaign, Urbana contributing to our jail, or to the judiciary that ends up going into jail. And then above that is the legislature who writes our laws. And if our laws are inherently biased, then we need to, try to interpret if that's the case, and have to ultimately influence the legislature. And then it comes back, of course, to the citizens who elect everybody. I think this is a municipal matter primarily, but I think the county needs to play a role, but I don't think the county needs to lead it. I think this whole matter needs to go to the community coalition, because I've heard this evening discussion that we can't fix everything, which is right. But in the community coalition, there are educators, people in the education fields. There are people from mental health. There are people in all aspects of our community. And maybe this is where that belongs, not just compartmentalized within the criminal justice system, but it should be in a larger sphere of, a larger group of people who have greater expertise that can look at a wider array of impacts in our community that lead to what we're concerned about. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Ms. Harrison.
So one thing I just want to follow up on, I think, so our criminal justice system is based on the premise that the burden is on the state to prove their case. And I think when you hear of injustices within our jail population, the burden is on the county to take care of that, and the burden is on us as a form of government in order to look at that as a issue within our community. So I think we've seen the buck passed year after year of, well, we think it should be a municipal issue, we think it should be a county issue, we think it should be a state issue. They're all working together, but someone has to do something and make that first step. So I think this evening, the resolution that was offered, where it also states the number of people that would serve on the task force, I believe that it is not a prescriptive description. If there's 2 spots that are designated for city council members, 1 out of Urbana, 1 out of Champaign. The other 9 are for community members. There are some suggestions of where we think some expertise would be very valuable on the committee, but it's open to anyone and everyone. So please, everyone here tonight, when we open up the application process, please apply. We want your experience and your dedication to be a part of this. And we really want to make sure that we have a task force that looks at this issue comprehensively. And I'm really looking forward to the results that come out of it, but I do believe that this resolution gives us some guidelines so we're not just staring at a blank piece of paper and starting from scratch.
Ms. Bergson next, and then Mr. Quisenberry. Your microphone, please.
The community coalition, which is quite wonderful, is composed of community leaders, people with the power and authority around. And I think the idea of a racial justice commission is to give some input, a voice, to the people who aren't leaders, who don't have the power and the authority, who are getting the wrong end of the stick. And I think their voice is what we need in the Racial Justice Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Bergson. Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes, I'd like to remind my colleagues that we're speaking to the amendment at this point of substituting the longer form for the shorter form. While I appreciate the input that I'm hearing shared, I think we need to get to the point of whether we're going to amend this or not, as Shana spoke to moments ago. And I will speak to the fact that while the longer form has more structure and suggests more detail, it is not entirely prescriptive. And I will say that I think it's very important that we bring along the cities of Champaign and Urbana in this discussion, because we know we can't address this issue strictly as the county. There are so many angles to what needs to be looked here. And while I think the thoughts, Mr. Anderson, that you have about the coalition's involvement are valid and important. I think they are an important aspect of this. I think this group has a specific charge that we've seen the need for. We had the recommendation from Dr. Kalmanoff early on that we needed to do something like this. We've been waiting for a while to get to it. The long form provides minimally more structure, but structure, I think, is necessary. We can't do this in a nebulous fashion, because then we won't know what we're going to get. There will be room for thrashing or dithering, I think I heard earlier. A little more structure is okay. A little bit of suggestion as to what should happen is okay. A timeline is okay, although we know sometimes timelines slip. So I do prefer the longer form and appreciate its suggestion. I won't let the length of the thing we eventually vote on dissuade me from voting for it, though.
Mr. Carter.
I thought I was going to get away with not saying anything, because I want to thank the audience and the people that came to support black awareness and racism in America. I won't say Champaign County, but America. Now, you know, my father taught me something about lying to yourself. And I had a problem with that. I kind of understand what he was talking about. But you know, we do things that it gets so embedded in us till we lie to ourselves about it. We can't come to the fact that it is real. And I'm saying this because I'm an old man. And what I have been through in America. The first thing we always say, well, we can't do this. Well, everything we do was planned. It didn't just happen. It was planned. It was developed to do what we are doing. Every system was planned. Fact of the matter is no law or justice in America for black folks. They were dealt out of it to begin with. Thank you. Just like this. Nobody taking time. How many black people put in their input into this? Who said? How many black folks had anything to say about what's on this piece of paper? Huh? I can't see that. In the first place, and not being facetious or mean, but black folk can't represent black. I mean, white folk can't represent black folks because it's a different culture. And the culture is so different till the suffering and pain don't allow you to do that. You don't understand what a black man wake up and have to go through every day of his life. And right now, the jail thing has been for centuries. We know about that. That's an old story. But I'm looking at the economic situation in the black community. Where is it on here? Huh? And if you look at it, you don't have to be Einstein to figure that out. Look where your money go every week. How much money go in the black community? It's real. Then you wonder, well, why they act up? They acting up because they are depressed. When you starve somebody to death, pay them $8 an hour to work, and then turn around and have a credit report. This is America I'm talking about. This is what America do. Now, how you going to exist paying somebody $8 an hour when you get a good hamburger, you got to pay $9? And I'm saying this because I'm tired of hearing this excuse that we always coming up about this black racial issue. It's just a lot of bull crap. We need to get real and get rid of it and come on and say, look, we're going to do what we're supposed to do, be citizens for everybody in this country. And I'm going to say one more thing that bothers me real bad. You know, it's nothing wrong with immigration. But I sit and look at the very people that come to America, which are my peoples, made it fit to live in for everybody. Slavery. They used to sell a black young man $3,500 a whop. And you could buy a brand new Chevrolet for $400. Now, is that economics? Huh? Who getting the money? And we never been Dale in it. We never been Dale family. And we should recognize that and quit making these excuses. And I'm going to say about, I didn't finish about immigration. Now, they come to America for a better life because they are leaving prosecution. But when they get here and get in the system, who started making the rules? The very people that leave prosecution and come here for betterment end up, when they get here and get settled, who started making the rules? Everybody quiet, but are you listening at me? I am. The very people that run from prosecution come to America, but somehow they end up in that same old rotten system, but they just left from. They just ran away from. How can any human being do that? That's bothered me. I always thought about that. Why is a human being do such bad things to another human being? And we think, we make some excuses that it's all right. It's all right to do that. And I thought this night would never come, you all. I've been suffering and waiting for a long time, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. I don't know which one, Mr. McGuire and then Mr. Shore.
I guess I'll speak briefly to the amendment. And I don't know who got all the emails from the mayors, these two cities, and because I know the chair and the vice chair from Deb Finan and Laura Pressing, and the discussion about therefore what's resolved that the cities and the mayors will request or want. There's some issues about wanting MOUs and funding and all those things. So it's a lot more complicated than just this one paragraph that's listed. which goes to many of the comments that are discussed tonight about, you know, what we can have the cities do or not do and how they might be involved, which, you know, the executive board of the Community Coalition already has these discussions going on. So I'm not sure why I mean, I'll extend my remarks later, but so it ends up being a lot more complicated. They're another, you know, another form of government, elected government, just like we are, just like the courts are elected, just like the sheriff is elected. And I mean, we're sitting here trying to tell them how to operate, and I mean, I think we want to work together, but we're deciding for them. They're going to be involved in a resolution and MOU without discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Shore.
I will keep these comments to the amendment, but I will have more later. We hear a lot about the buzzword of transparency in government, and I think that one thing that we can do as a public body to increase our transparency is to be specific in the actions that we're taking, and that's what I like about this amendment. This amendment says how many members it will have. It delineates that for sure that this body will advise and consent the chair in the making of the appointments. It delineates how the chair of this task force will be elected or appointed. And it also says that the body itself, in another show of transparency, is subject to the Open Meetings Act. All of these are things that I think are fairly reasonable. You know, we can, if there are other issues that people would like to talk about this amendment, I'm sure that they're open for discussion. But, you know, I think that as we try to establish trust in the community on an issue that's clearly very contentious, I think it's in our best interest to be as transparent in the steps that we are taking as possible. Another point that I'll bring up relates to the appointments and whether or not this draft as written prohibits interested parties from being on the task force. I don't see that. It says these members shall be chosen for their knowledge of justice, community action, data collection and analysis, race studies in America, juvenile justice, youth services, and other related fields. So, first of all, there's the catch-all of other related fields. Second of all, certainly community activism is another way in which individuals can be a part of this. Certainly individuals who have had interactions with our criminal justice system have knowledge of justice, or lack thereof. They have knowledge of race studies in America, and perhaps even juvenile justice. So I do believe that there is room in this draft, as it is written, for individuals from all walks of life to serve. My third point will address the broader issues that have been discussed as something we could talk about as part of this task force. I think it's already been, you know, hashed to death that we as the county, really our main control is over the purse strings of the criminal justice system. That being said, I do think that addressing that issue is an economic issue. I think when you take, you know, young people who are smoking, you know, the same joint that somebody could be smoking in one of the residence halls that I represent and put them in jail while my constituents get to keep going to school, that's an economic issue. And that's something that we can address by addressing this issue.
Mr. Harkey and Ms. Harrison have already spoken, but Mr. Schrader has not, so I'll go to Mr. Schrader.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll support the short version. I won't support the long version, and I'll tell you why. Because with all due respect to my colleagues, I keep hearing that this has structure, but it doesn't have structure. You can call it prescription. I don't care what you call it, but it's structure. The other thing, too, is it's a Champaign County task force, and there are no Champaign County board members that are lined up for appointment on this board, and I think it should be at least one individual, and probably only one individual. And I think it should be Ms. Berkson, as the chair of Justice Committee, should be on this body. But if you're going to have a task force, and it's a county task force, and you don't include a member of this body, then I can't see it being a task force of this body. So I will support the short version, but I won't support the long version.
Okay, Mr. Herkey and then Ms. Harrison.
Yeah, I would point out the short version doesn't directly require that county board members be appointed, and the long version also leaves it open that the board chair can appoint basically any number of county board members to that. Secondly, on the money issue, especially regarding the two cities, there's not a dime of money being spent on this task force, something I necessarily don't agree with, but it seemed to be the majority opinion. So concerns about the mayors about having to participate money are irrelevant, and it's been discussed many times, so people need to quit bringing that up because it's not really an issue. There's no money involved. Secondly, as to requirements of an MOU, no MOU would be required for the chair to appoint a member of either city council to this board. That person has absolute right, despite what their mayors may want, has a right to serve on this, and we have to have buy-in from the cities. And then I do want to address one other direct concern that people seem to have about who's written this. I worked directly with Aaron Ammons several times in the language on this. It has been before Lorraine and Lloyd for a couple of weeks, and they've had input on it. And Evelyn and I even from Black Lives Matter sat down one day to talk about language on this. So there has been input. And again, I do not see how the shorter version offers for more diversity on this council than the second version. But I have a good feeling nobody's mind's going to be changed by those facts. So.
Thank you, Mr. Herkey. Ms. Harrison?
I really just wanted to speak to the clarification. I mean, we're not, we can't force municipalities to participate. We cannot require them to be a part of this. We're simply requesting them to be a part of it because we think they're an integral part of this. At this point, we're taking the leadership and actually doing something. We're passing it over to the cities to participate. It's up to them to decide what that means, but someone's got to get the ball rolling.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Did I see your hand, Ms. Berkson?
Appointed. Members of the city council can be appointed. They can act on it as individuals, but they will not be representatives of the cities unless the cities authorize them to be. And the cities, the mayors say that we'll have to have intergovernmental agreements and memorandums of understanding, all the other things. And we've got all this momentum going. I think we want a racial justice task force now. Well, we can't have it now if we want the cities to be involved officially right now. So I think the task force should go out and see what is needed. I think the task force can get the memorandum of understanding or intergovernmental agreement or whatever. I think we need to have a task force now, and it can do a lot of these things that, if you put them in the prescription, could keep us from ever getting one.
Ms. Michaels is next, and then Mr. McGuire. Ms. Michaels hasn't spoken yet.
Sorry, I'll keep it brief here. I, too, have a difficult time supporting the long form. I'll support the short one, though. And part of the reason does have to do with the appointments and stuff. This task force could actually come together with some great ideas and some background already prepared to talk to the cities and sit down and try to accomplish some things with some ideas that they come up with or strategize. In this resolution, it says, shall be a member of the city council, Urbana, shall be a member of the Champaign City Council. You know, if this is a county board should have been mentioned in here first. But the other part of that is that it already has decided 2 of the members. This way, if they are part of the council, that's fine. If they aren't, that's fine too. It leaves more doors open for a broader range of people to be able to be a part of this Justice Task Force and then come together with a plan, because that's how things happen.
Ms. Schwartz, and then Mr. McGuire. Ms. Schwartz hasn't spoken yet.
So I just want to make a recommendation to Mr. Hartke, if he's going to listen. Mr. Hartke, I would like to make a recommendation for you to make a friendly clarification to your thing that maybe will alleviate some of these issues. So instead of asking the cities for commitments, we can ask for the city's participation, which is really what we're really asking. And so I think their issue with the IGA and MOUs and all that stuff is because the wording is commitment. So change the word, call it participation instead of commitment. I think we do want the participation, get rid of commitments so it doesn't sound like funding.
I would gladly accept that as a friendly
Okay.
amendment.
And the other thing is, when we're talking about we would like the task force to include a member of the city councils. Right now it says chosen by that body, strike out chosen by that body, so then we're not putting it on them to choose it. We would like a member, if they want to choose it, great. If they don't, fine, whatever.
And again, if I can just respond, I'm more than happy to take that as friendly amendments on both of those. That language was added at the request of other members because they wanted the cities to have power to choose their own. My conversations with city councilmen, admittedly not the two mayors, but several city councilmen from both, is that there are several interested, but they know that they want a good member on. And the idea here is not, we're not going to have these members of the city council on this board because then they're going to tell Rantoul what to do. There's plain language in here also to include members of other rural communities. Specifically, I think there should be some university representation because university police do a lot of the policing that we have problems with. So the chosen by the body, I'm fine with striking that.
Okay, Mr. McGuire.
I don't know. And I don't know that I understand because as someone who organizes or has organized and builds coalitions, it's about bringing people together to accomplish something. If we want to, have an impact on arrests in Urbana and Champaign, making sure that the police, and the mayors and the police chiefs are buying in to something and working and are part of this. That's the idea. I don't know that us dictating to them and deciding for them how they're going to vote, and how they're going to decide who is going to be on our committee or on our task force is the way to deal with that. I don't think that's the way that would work. I've never seen it operate that way. That's not the way I organize.
Okay, Mr. Carter, round two for you.
Yeah. You see how we complicate things? We sit up here and swear that we good and kind and all this crap, and we can't get a little resolution together. Huh? Come on, folks. Quit bullshit. Is any kids? I won't say what I want to say. Just quit jibing each other. The city hire folks, the university hire folks, which I get a lot of mistreatment out there is not fair. Anywhere is a human element is racism. And you might well put them all in the pot and get it over with. Why are we going to keep on sitting up here wasting time when it's not even necessary? A little common sense. We forget about that, I think. When we come to common sense, boy, we whoop. And I just mentioned that. Why are we doing this when we know that we are not being fair, when we want to sit up here and come up with another resolution that won't amount a hill of beans? If you don't put what in there now that's count, what good is it? Why waste the time if it's not meaningful? Oh, boy.
Okay, Ms. Harrison.
Sorry, and I have a clarifying question, because I'm just reading through the short version, and the now for let it be resolved, like the last part is the Champaign County Board within a time frame and format to be agreed upon by the county board. So if we do the short version, are we gonna have to come back with another version in order to give the time frame and parameters? Because I think if that's the case, then that's where the amendment, and if we adopt the suggestions that Rachel had made to Josh's, which he accepted, I think we're doing two steps in one motion instead of doing one step and then next month coming back with the time frame and parameters. So I think we could take care of the whole thing tonight if we wanted to.
The way I saw the hands is Ms. Bergson and Mr. Quisenberry and then Mr. Alex. And your microphone, please.
I think deciding in advance when you have done your job is a mistake. I think the time frame, the committee would report, but I think the time frame needs to be decided by the board and the committee jointly.
Okay, Mr. Quisenberry.
I was going to say, Mr. Carter, and it inspired me to call the question, but I'm going to let Mr. Alex say his piece first.
No, pass.
Well, as chair, I've held back making any comments, so I won't let you call a question quite yet.
I'm only talking about the amendment.
I'm speaking to the amendment. Oh, I'm speaking to that. Okay. Okay, I'm definitely supportive of a racial justice task force. There's absolutely no question about that, and it's very clear that we have many issues in our community. I've been here 44 years. I've worked long and hard in the community, but what I'm reflecting on is my years of teaching social planning and citizen participation at the university, working in communities around the state, doing 11 charrettes with my students, and knowing that the interesting factor when you go into a community to work with the community, oftentimes the reason we've been invited in is what the community thinks is the issue, but with discussions with community members, they discover that the tip of the iceberg is not really the issue. It's what's driving to the tip of the iceberg, and it's all the other factors that formulate what they're seeing, whatever it is, on the surface. So it's for those very reasons that the long form I find is too constraining to allow that kind of development of discussion within our community, to let the people in our community have the chance. This really hasn't happened much here, where we really sit down and talk about what are the things that are troubling, what are driving these issues, and then collectively how we can work on them within the range of what we can do within a county. Some of the issues, it's been acknowledged already this evening, are up at the legislative level, and that's not within our domain. So I'm very supportive of the short form. If it's necessary to put limitation in there as to number of people on the task force, there's no problem about that. But I want you to understand the reasoning behind why I think we need the opportunity to open this up totally to the community, for the community to be telling us what should be the focus and where we should be trying to direct our energies and our engagement with the university, or whatever is necessary to ferret out these issues so we can work together. Thank you. Okay, the question has been called. Is there a second? All right, Ms. Bergson is calling. Mr. Maxwell, are you seconding? The amendment, the substitution amendment of the long form.
And I should point out that it has chosen by that body struck from both the Urbana City Council and the Champaign City Council line. And it has participation instead of commitment in the third, be it resolved, be it further, or the second, be it further resolved paragraph, and the last line of that paragraph is struck.
That is correct. Thank you for pointing that out. All right. Oh, no, we have a second. Thank you. Roll call. Got it. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Quisenberry.
Yes.
Rector.
No.
Schrader. No. Schwartz. Shore.
Yes.
Alex. Anderson. No. Bergson. Yeah. Carter. Yes. Cowart. Yes. Esri. No. Harper. No. Harrison. Yes. Hartke.
Yes.
Jay. No. Maxwell. No. McGuire. No. Michaels. No. Mitchell. No. Petrie.
No.
Yes. That was a vote on the amendment.
That was a vote only on the substitution. Now we return to the original point, which is the short version that had the straw vote during the committee of the whole last week, and that is in our packet for tonight. Mr. Alex.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that hasn't been said, obviously I'm supportive of this, but one thing that hasn't been said is nobody's spoken to what I think is really the only argument that's been made against this. And I think if you look at the argument that was made by Mr. Dye in the News Gazette, the argument that was made by Mr. Kimmy, concerns, sort of more nuanced concerns I've heard expressed by elected officials, I think it all comes down to the same argument. And that argument is that there are many factors that can explain the racial disparity in the jail population. You know, Dr. Kalmanoff explicitly said in his report, you know, disparity is not necessarily evidence of discrimination. And the problem with this argument is that it comes down to essentially saying that if we can't address everything, we shouldn't do anything. And there are many organizations and groups in this community and in the state and this country that are working on trying to address the larger context in which these problems happen. Economics, education, transportation, housing, all the things we've heard about today, and all the things we hear about every day. The concern, if you follow this argument, the concern is that essentially by supporting the creation of this task force, we are sending the message that the criminal justice system is the reason that there's a racial disparity in the jail. I would argue that that's not correct. I think the message that we are sending by supporting a racial justice task force is that nothing that any government does is above scrutiny, and that the bottom line is that the justice system in this county costs the taxpayers a whole lot of money, has a major impact on the lives of a lot of citizens of this community, and it's in the interest of fiscal responsibility and in the interest of justice to ask that the justice system, to make sure that the justice system is not making a bad situation worse, and if it is, to look at ways of how we can address that. So I'm going to support this.
Are there other comments? Mr. Harper.
Yes, very well said there, Mr. Alex. I was going to be quite honest, and my caucus can agree. When I got here tonight, I was dead set against this issue because I did not think, just as Mr. Alex stated, it went to the core of the problems. socioeconomical problems. And when Mr. Mitchell spoke, I appreciate that he said this is a start and there's more problems to fix. And in fact, during our recess, I went out and thanked him because I told him exactly what I just said. I was dead set against this whole issue. But it's addressing, this is a start to address some other issues. So I will support this short version.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harper. Mr. Carter, 3 times up to bat tonight. Okay.
What I'm hearing is, wait a minute, y'all, you're clapping, but we finna get shortchanged. What they saying is, if you don't take the short version, you don't get nothing. That's what they're saying. We done waited 400 years, man. For what, come on. That's just what you're saying. We're not gonna, if you don't take the jail part and leave all the economics and all the rest of it, we're not gonna agree. That's what you're saying. You can't bull jive me, babe. I'm listening at you.
I'm not bull jiving you, you know that.
Well, why is it that you, the chair, would set up there and go for that?
Mr. Carter, I did it because of my years of experience of working with communities, and I think the shorter version allows us much more capacity to look at things.
What you mean to tell me, Madam Chair, that we not, we a bunch of human beings can't get up in this chamber and do something for the good of the people that not been treated fairly. You got to piecemeal it. Why piecemeal it? If you can't go all the way, leave it alone. We've been piecemealing for 400 years, Madam Chair. And that's all we can get. We can't get no further than piecemealing. And I'm tired.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
So I'm not receptive to a short version. If we can't put it all in there, the heck with it.
Mr. Maxwell, did I see your hand? You haven't spoken yet.
The short version is actually one I'm obviously in favor of, since I helped write it, but it does do all these things that the long form would have done. I have a feeling the chair will appoint the same number, if not more than what the short form or the long form. I think she'll do a fair job of it, and I think not just the jail issues will be looked at, as they should be, but I believe that we will be looking at and going into the communities to see what their needs are and what they would like to see. So I believe all these things can be accommodated with the short form, and it does give a lot of leeway and makes it so that all these things can enter in, and in the long run, the short form is probably going to be the long form. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Quisenberry.
Yeah, I feel like I'm saying the same thing, but I'm going to say it in a different way. You can't unsee the long form. It has suggestions, it has guidance in it, it is the input of several people, but it does, the short form puts the burden on you, Madam Chairman, to recognize that input and act on it. And so I choose at this point to move forward with what I can move forward with and trust that you will not unsee the input that's in the long form.
I can assure everybody that I will integrate the suggestions that are in the long form into how we set up the task force under the guidance should the short form be passed this evening. Ms. Harrison, I think this is your fourth time, or is it the fifth?
Something like that. Well, clarifying question. So I guess the process, will it be that we open up an application for an appointment process first, and then will we come back to the county board to do the time frame and format? Or how is it going to roll out, I guess? I don't know if that goes to the author of the resolution or to the board chair. So either, whoever wants to answer.
Well, I think the author or the editor, it actually was from Mr. Kilgore originally, and Mr. Maxwell made some adjustments. No? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I had misinformation. Well, anyway, it came from some group, and Mr. Maxwell made a few adjustments to it, so maybe he should respond to what he has in mind.
I'll be glad to. It leaves it up to the chair, but I believe the chair will go, first thing, we'll be seeking input from various people and various groups as to who the committee should be made up of. And I think once the committee is put together, she'll come back for approval of that committee and get a few meetings of the committee, and then come back to us with the time frame and the timelines. That would be my idea of how it might work, but again, that would be pretty much in the chair's hands to do these things. Thank you.
Okay, and then I guess, can we just be updated then on what the progress is? Maybe like, I don't know if we'll be ready by next month in November, just so if we hear what input has been asked for, who we're approaching for the committee, maybe if we can do monthly updates about where the Racial Justice Task Force is at, whether through Justice or Board Chair, whoever, I think that would be great.
I would be happy to do that, but you're talking on the assumption that it's going to pass. Any other comments? Ms. Schwartz.
Just a quick question. So the short version says it's going to sunset 18 months. Does that mean whether or not they're done, it will sunset 18 months from today? I mean, don't we want-
That's what it said. There was a similar provision in the Local Food Policy Council council that was set up, and the provision was such that council came forward to the county board asking to extend their provision, in which the county board approved doing. So that would be one of the mechanisms for handling that. I think there was another thought on, I can't speak on this, but on the Local Food Policy Council, was that maybe the council would, gave the council an opportunity to come forward to ask for some different structure, because the council might have felt that they were advancing to do some other things like getting grants or some of the things of that nature. So that was the reason it was done for the Local Food Policy Council. Okay, Mr. Carter, nice to see you.
Well, I'm going to the peoples. I'm not agreeing on this short stuff, but my tenure here is getting close. I don't have much on this earth to be here, so I still have a feeling for my children. But if you all want the short version, which, well, I'm trying to tell them, they're getting shortchanged again. The jail thing has been we've been knowing that for centuries, y'all. We've been knowing the jail house has been robbing us for centuries. That's not the problem. We know that. But what you gonna know about these people going to work every day, getting these low wages and no jobs? And you're not in the job market. When it come to jobs, you are the lowest on the totem pole. And you wanna, wait, what, you leaving that out though? If you taking this, you leaving out that segment of it. And what they telling you, oh, I'm gonna set up here, I love you, but I'm gonna hit you upside the head with a brick. Now, if you all want that, I'll vote for it, and I don't want it, really. Is that what y'all want, the short version? You want the long version? Well, then.
Okay, wait, Mr. Carter, Mr. Carter,
I want to vote on it. That's
I,
what
I,
you're saying.
I
like
know,
to
but
vote on it.
the conversation with the audience is not part of our rules.
That's who we represent. That's who
That,
we represent.
our rules don't allow that, I'm sorry. Well, we've had a vote on that, we're proceeding accordingly. Mr. Jay, did you have a comment?
Can I assume that there's not going to be any financial burden put on the county for any of this structure for this new program? That we're going to do it with volunteer help entirely and no administration?
That's the way it's presently set up. That's the way the Local Food Policy Council is also set up.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready for the question? Yes, second? All right. All right, all of those in favor of the roll call? Is there a second for the roll call? Mr. Shore. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Quisenberry.
Yes.
Rector.
No.
Schrader. Schwartz. Shore. Alex. Anderson. Bergson.
Point of order. Want quiet.
Please, point of order. Okay, would the clerk please continue? Thank
Carter.
you.
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Cowart. Esri.
Yes.
Harper. Harrison. Harkey.
Yes.
Jay. Maxwell.
Yes.
McGuire. Michaels. Mitchell. Petrie. Petrie.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. The short form does pass to create a racial justice task force from the county. All right, moving to finance. Mr. Alex, are you ready?
I am. I would move adoption of resolution number 9406, authorizing payment of claims authorization.
Second.
Was that Mr. Quisenberry
It
who
was.
seconded? Thank you very much. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Continue, Mr. Alex.
Thank you. I move adoption of resolution number 9407, authorizing purchases not following the purchasing policy.
Is there a second, please? Ms. Bergson. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Thank you. Continue, Mr. Alex.
Thank you. I move adoption of ordinance number 968, providing for the issue of not to exceed $2,600,000 general obligation refunding bonds, general sales tax alternate revenue source for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding alternate bonds, providing for the pledge of general sales taxes and the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof, otherwise known as the bond ordinance.
Thank you. Is that a second, Ms. Michaels? All right.
And I would note that this requires a roll call and 15 votes.
Thank you for that reminder. Are there any questions, or our bond expert, Ms. Schwartz, do you have any additional comments that you'd like to share with everyone? No? Okay. All right. Seeing none, then all of those in favor of them, roll call. You just said it.
Quisenberry,
It's a long night.
Yes.
Rector,
Yes.
Schrader, Schwartz, Shore,
Yes.
Alex, Anderson, Bergson, Carter,
This is
Cowart.
for the nursing home. You'll vote yes.
Cowart, Cowart,
Ms. Coward, are you voting?
Esri,
Yes.
Harper, Harrison, Harkey, Jay, Maxwell,
Yes.
McGuire, Michaels, Petrie.
Yes. Mr. Alex, do you want to continue your
I
finance?
do. I've got
All
one
right.
item from the addendum. This will be item B1, adoption of resolution number 9430, authorizing budget amendment 15-53. Increased appropriations of $18,000, increased revenue of $18,000 for community development block grant housing rehab to the Regional Planning Commission for contract with the Village of Rantoul to assist its administration of the CDBG home rehabilitation program that benefits low and moderate income residents.
Thank you, Ms. Michaels.
And I would note that this also requires a roll call.
Yes, thank you again for the reminder. Are there any questions or discussion? Or will the clerk please call the roll?
Quisenberry,
Yes.
Rector,
Yes.
Schrader, Schwartz, Shore,
Yes.
Alex, Anderson, Bergson, Carter, Cowart, Esri,
Yes.
Harper, Harrison, Harkey, Jay, Maxwell,
Yes.
McGuire, Michaels, Mitchell, Petrie.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Alex. Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes, the Policy, Personnel, and Appointments portion of the Committee of the Whole recommends adoption of Resolution Number 9408 in support of improved legislation to protect drinking water, and I so move.
Mr. Esri, thank you for your second. Any discussion on this resolution? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, this is approved. Do you want to take your next one?
Also, Policy moves adoption of Resolution Number 9409, amending Resolution Number 4249, creating the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission.
Is there a second, please? Mr. Mitchell, are there any questions or discussion on this? Mr. Jay?
Sorry, this is a change to the bylaws, essentially a change to the bylaws of the Regional Planning Commission that goes from having one member on the RPC board representing, I'm sorry.
That isn't quite
Am I on
correct.
the wrong item?
No, you just don't have the explanation quite correctly.
Why am I giving this anyway?
I don't know, that too, but would you, I choose you, you haven't talked.
The county board determines the membership of the Regional Planning Commission. The Regional Planning Commission has amended its own bylaws to add this position, but the county board actually is the body that establishes the membership of the Regional Planning Commission. So the RPC is requesting the county board to make this change to increase the membership by one minority representative. You'd have to ask commission members that because they attend those meetings and would know that.
Maybe Mr. Schrader has some insight. Do you have some insight, Mr. Schrader? You're a commission member.
You're also too, Madam Chair. But anyway, if you would like me to add, I will. It was just an oversight, unfortunately. Most of the majority of the RPC felt that we needed another community member. So unfortunately, we did it wrong. So we're here to rectify the problem, if the board so deems so.
Okay, any other questions? I do have a comment for the record, and I will make the comment at the RPC meeting. This caused me to go back and look at the 4 resolutions, the original resolution, then 2, 3, and we're up to this 4th resolution in forming the RPC, and then it sort of morphed over time. And in the morphing over time, some interesting things got lost, they got added, and this member is a non-dues paying member, just to remind people. So there's 2 non-dues paying members. There are 7 dues paying entities to the RPC, and by population, some have more members, such as the county board has 3, Urbana and Champaign have 2, so that makes an 11-member commission, along with members who are appointed. And the purpose of these members are to represent low income. And my concern right now is that we are not doing a good enough job in making certain that the breadth of low-income people are being represented by these 2 individuals on the RPC. And I hope when additional appointments come along for the RPC to consider that we will include, we have a very large Spanish speaking population in Rantoul, and it's growing. We have such a population here. It's not proportionally as large as Rantoul, and that's a population is not being represented on the RPC. So for that reason, I will support the error that the commission made in increasing it to 2, but I do want it noted that I think we must be certain that we remember we have many different minority populations in our county. Thanks. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, thank you, Mr. J. It's approved.
I have one from the addenda, too.
Yes, thank you.
I would move adoption of Resolution 9431, which honors retiring County Board Member Jeff Kibler, and I'd like to speak to it after a second.
Second, please. Wow, there are lots of them. Mr. Mitchell, you are appropriate for that second.
All right, I'd like to read this into the record. Whereas Jeff Kibler was sworn in as Champaign County Board Member on February 23rd, 2012, and whereas Jeff Kibler has served the citizens of Champaign County as a representative of the Champaign County Board District 3 from February 23rd, 2012 until September 30th, 2015. It is District 5. Whereas during his tenure as a Champaign County Board Member, Jeff Kibler served on the following standing committees: County Facilities from 2012 to 2015, Labor Committee from 2012 to 2014, and the Committee of the Whole from 2012 to 2015. And whereas during his tenure as Champaign County Board Member, Jeff Kibler also served in a liaison position as the County Board's representative on the MLK Celebration Committee in 2014. And whereas during his tenure as a Champaign County Board Member, Jeff Kibler also served in a leadership role as the Assistant Deputy Chair of Policy, Personnel, and Appointment Committee of the Whole from 2012 to 2014, and as Vice Chair of the County Board from 2014 through 2015. And whereas the Champaign County Board seeks to publicly recognize the commitment and dedication of Jeff Kibler, who served the citizens of Champaign County as an elected official over a term of 3.5 years. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Champaign County Board hereby recognizes the service of Jeff Kibler and the benefit that service brought to our county government, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be presented to Jeff Kibler in recognition of his years of service to the citizens of Champaign County. And I would also point out that he also served on the nursing home board for 2 years, which was, I thought he did and then stepped down when. Okay, then I'm wrong.
Mr. Quisenberry, that was very well written. Thank you very much. Mr. McGuire, would you like to add a comment?
Yes, can we have it spelled Keebler, please?
I thought it was spelled that way.
Mr. Carter, yes. Would you turn on your microphone, please? Thank you.
You know, I can understand when you tell me flat out, don't tell me you love me, and then when it come time for that hug, you deny me of the hug. I don't understand that. Well, to make it more simple, don't tell me that you care, and then when it come time to give the caring, you against it. I'd rather for you to tell me straight up how you feel. If it no, tell me no. I can understand that.
Well, I think that you misunderstand the reason that I voted the way I do is because I care
Point of
so
order.
very much.
This is out of order.
What is
All
out
right.
of order?
Yes, we have. I apologize to everyone. Okay, yes, you ready? Everybody in favor of the recognition of Jeff Kibler, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Well, I do miss what he always described himself to me when he was sitting next to me as he says, I'm just your eye candy, and that's. So I miss that constant comment next to me. All right, moving to new business. Yes, Mr. Esri, we had a little
Yep.
too much laughter
Oh, no
there,
problem.
didn't we?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move adoption of resolution number 9410, approving partial release of judgment as to certain property at 207 West Green, Champaign, Illinois. And I believe Mr. Fletcher would have liked to have been. He got representation here to speak on it. Should it get a second?
Madam Chair.
We need a second, please. All right, thank you, Mr. Quisenberry. Yes, Ms. Mann, welcome.
Yes, I'm not Mr. Fletcher, but I'm here on his behalf. I have good news. A lot of you know the name Eduardo Ramos. The county has a judgment against Eduardo and Bernard Ramos in the amount of about $54,000, and it looks like we're going to be paid for some of that. We filed a judgment lien against property that Mr. Eduardo Ramos owns in Champaign, and that property is selling. And as part of that process, we should be paid in part. The only thing is that we're the third or the fourth creditor in line for the to collect. And Mr. Ramos only owns 1/3 of the property, and so there isn't enough money to go around to all the creditors. But in this instance, the sellers and the creditors have sort of gotten together in an effort to increase the pot for everybody, and we are going to get some. There is a mortgage that takes the bulk of the proceeds, and the creditors, and one of the things we're asking you to do as part of this ordinance, have agreed to allow a Mr. Mayor to also be reimbursed for money that he paid on toward those mortgages. We were approached by the seller's attorney asking us and the other creditors, who include the City of Champaign and Washington Mutual, if we would allow that creditor to take out of order, because the property was in foreclosure, and without those payments, the sales price would have been much reduced, and there would have been essentially then nothing, much less to go around. So once that is done and all the mortgage is paid and all the other expenses are paid, the money attributable then to Mr. Edward Ramos is just over $9,000. The agreement with the creditors would be that we would receive 1,500 of those dollars. The city of Champaign would receive a little more, and the Washington Mutual would receive some too. The good thing about this is that the city of Champaign's lien by itself is over 15,000. So you know, we're not in line to get any money at all, except that because the creditors have been willing to work together with the seller, we're getting $1,500. That would reduce the judgment amount against the Ramoses by the equivalent $1,500. So that's what the ordinance is. We're asking that you approve it and that you authorize, I believe, the chair to sign the release, which has been substituted from your packets. I don't know if you noticed that, but is that, okay. Are there any questions about that?
Mr. Mitchell?
How many properties are left to go?
I don't know. I think he does, I think they do own other properties in this county, and we have liens against all of them. I don't know how many others there are. But I think that we may be, hopefully we will be back. I think that some of them are for sale.
And how many are in foreclosure?
I don't know that either. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions of Ms. Mann? Seeing none, all in favor of her recommendation, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Mann. Mr. Quisenberry, you have a question? Oh, thank you for doing that. A second for that. Ms. Bergson, all in favor of a recess? I didn't even have to say anything. Thank you and good night. It's been a long meeting. I appreciate your attendance and attention.